Welcome back, everyone. Jake here. Currently, we're on day 90 of Russia's disastrous invasion of Ukraine, and it's estimated that over 29,000 Russian soldiers have been killed so far. This is an extremely deadly conflict for both sides, but Russia is still losing several hundred soldiers a day. When we check out the war map put out by the BBC, over the last couple weeks, the last month, Russia's made no significant breakthrough gaining control of the Donbass region. Everywhere else, they're just pretty much holding the line. In this video, I want to reflect on potentially what I got wrong about this conflict going back 3 months, because 3 months ago, I was pretty confident that as soon as pictures and videos and stories of the war got back to the Russian people, the people of Russia would no longer support this war. They would rise up against their governments, rise up against Vladimir Putin, and put an end to it. So obviously, I got that wrong. And in this video, let's talk about potentially why. And to be fair to many people of Russia, there were protests in the early weeks of the war. This article's from March 7th about 5,000 anti-war protesters being arrested. But now that it's almost June, the protests have stopped. Nobody is taking to the streets. Nobody is rising up. So let's talk about why. Why are the Russian people tolerating this war? And the first thing is millions, potentially, of Russians have left their country, left home to move abroad in order to protest this war, to escape persecution from Vladimir Putin's regime. This is a brain drain for Russia, as people with the financial means to move abroad are more likely to be educated. Think competent government workers, engineers, doctors, people who would rather live abroad than live in Vladimir Putin's regime. But let's now talk about the soldiers choosing to continue to fight this war. We're 90 days in, and these soldiers are being ordered to fire on schools, fire on hospitals, fire on churches, kill innocent civilians. Why are they choosing to continue to fight this war? Now, to be fair, there are thousands of Russian soldiers who have chosen to surrender, or they've maybe defected and gone back to Russia, deserted their posts. But obviously, there's still enough for this war to continue. And what I've been learning about Russia that I didn't know prior is they have a very strong history of indoctrinating their children into military culture, into patriotic celebrations. Many of these pictures are from Victory Day parades in which their children just dress up as soldiers, promoting guns, promoting war, promoting their history, mostly revolving around World War II. And these pictures are absolutely shocking of children in kindergarten, children in first grade, being arranged in the Z pattern, the symbol for this war in Ukraine. This video went viral of preschoolers parading around their school in cardboard tanks and military uniforms.
Командир танкистов Датаева Рима Салиховна. За танкистами воздушный парад возглавляет группа из 4 самолетов.
Obviously, these children are innocent and they have no clue what is going on inside Ukraine. It is the teachers and the administrators at these schools choosing to dress them up and then take pictures and videos of them for propaganda purposes. But Vladimir Putin himself, if we think about how he views his legacy for Russia, he views himself as a messiah for the Russian people, as a savior of basically the Russian Empire. When you think about the Soviet Union's collapse in the early 90s and the chaos the Russian Federation experienced, he took power basically at the best time. This was in 2000, and he's been firmly in control of the country for 22 years. And I'm sure Vladimir Putin studies history, and he looks at these maps of the Russian Empire prior to World War I. This is Europe about the year 1910, and this was only 110 years ago. And I'm sure Vladimir Putin looks at this map and says, Georgia, Belarus, Ukraine, they didn't exist. Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Moldova, they didn't exist. They were part of the Russian Empire. They were Russian subjects. And even Poland didn't exist. And I'm sure Putin thinks to himself, those ungrateful former subjects of the Russian Empire, the czars should have just wiped them all out. So Putin looks at the territorial history from only a century ago of the Russian Empire and says, this is how it's supposed to be. This is why I am leading the Russian Federation today to rebuild the strength and glory and might of the Russian people and expand our empire back to our historical borders. And Putin can either do this through political means and soft power. Russia basically controls the government of Belarus, or they can do it through hard power. They can use their military. They've got 6,000 deployable nuclear warheads, so they've got cover from the West not to interfere, and that is what this invasion of Ukraine is all about. It's about expanding Russia's imperial borders to get control of people, to get control of resources, to enrich the ethnic Russians of Moscow and St. Petersburg. So how is Vladimir Putin going to accomplish this? He's a big fan of history, and I'm sure he looked to the success of Germany in World War II, specifically their Hitler Youth program, because this is how you get soldiers willing to kill for you, soldiers willing to die for you, soldiers with unquestioned loyalty of about what you're going to order them to do. Bombing schools, bombing hospitals, bombing churches. The Hitler Youth program dates back to 1922, but it became compulsory for all children in Germany in 1936. So if you start indoctrinating a 15-year-old in 1936, by 1941, they're 20 years old. They're basically the perfect soldier to go out and kill for you, go out and die for you. So Putin looked to history to say, how can I build an army that will not question my orders to invade and attack my neighbors, subjugate their people? So in 2015, he started his own youth program, his own youth army. This is what it's called in Russia, the Youth Army. Its official name is the Young Army Cadets National Movement, but it's basically just Putin's youth army. And this date of 2015 is not a coincidence. After the 2014 revolution in Ukraine, in which Russia lost control politically of the government in Kyiv, Putin decided, we're going to do this the hard way. We're going to build up our reserves, build up our military, and forcefully invade and take back the country. However, Putin didn't have the minds. He didn't have the hearts and souls of his young soldiers willing to goose step across the European plain. So in 2015, he started aggressively indoctrinating the children of Russia. So if you were, let's say, 11 years old in 2015, today, 7 years later, you're 18 and you're the perfect soldier to fight Putin's wars. Here are the pictures of Putin's youth army. These boys are probably 15, 16, 17 years old. These are the uniforms they get to wear, marching in military parades. And you'll notice the little emblem on their cap. This is the symbol associated with Putin's youth army. And they even got young ladies part of the organization, and these women get to learn wholesome activities, such as complete unquestioning devotion to the dear leader, Vladimir Putin. Here is an interesting documentary put out by the SBS from Australia. I want to show you about 50 seconds of this clip from this newsreel.
Promoting that image has become incredibly important to Vladimir Putin. Over the last decade, anti-Putin movements have been gaining steam. Led mostly by young people, this growing dissent created a big problem for the regime.
Что это у нас выросло за поколение, неохваченное и непатриотичное. Демократию развивать не вариант. Государство решило так ответить, пыталось таким образом с этой проблемой как-то поработать, повзаимодействовать.
Putin's answer was to bring more television, radio and regional newspapers under state control. He then created the Youth Army, his own military cadet program. This promotional video shows them centre stage at Victory Day. Recruits undertake a patriotic education program. The curriculum mixes World War II history and pro-Putin propaganda, promoting loyalty and comparing enemies of Russia to the Nazis.
Это все как-то очень сложно.
10 years ago in Russia, there was way more public dissension, public opposition to Vladimir Putin and his regime, and to correct this problem for Putin, he just took control of all of the TV stations, radio stations, and newspapers, and started putting out more pro-Putin, pro-imperialist Russia propaganda, and he started forming all of these youth programs, spending a lot of money in order to indoctrinate the children of the next generation. Now, surely you must be thinking participation in the Putin Youth Army must be voluntary. Here's the story of a high schooler that chose not to participate in Putin's Youth Army.
So, young activist Leonid was shocked when his high school established a branch of the Youth Army.
И по поводу юнармии, ну да, они говорили дополнительно, это не обязательно, но это было совсем не так. Ну, если ты не ходишь на лекции юнармии, то у тебя проблемы с оценками, приходит завал со стороны предметов, давление родителей, администрации и так далее. Либо ты подчиняешься, либо ты становишься экстремистом, допустим, как я.
So what he's saying is that the Putin Youth Army is integrated into all of the middle schools and high schools. And if you choose not to participate, then your grades in school will be lowered, you'll be failed classes, you'll be labeled an extremist potentially by teachers or administrators. This will put pressure on your parents to force you to participate in the Putin Youth Army because they don't want you failing your school, failing your grades. I'm sure there's also tremendous peer pressure and bullying going on for students who will not participate in Putin's Youth Army. There's also been lots of reports of the children of Ukraine. These are children in Russia-occupied Crimea. Vladimir Putin has spent millions of dollars on indoctrination programs to get these children to love Russia, to love Vladimir Putin. And think about, Crimea was seized 7 years ago. So Putin knew that he had to wait about 6 or 7 years for these 12, 13-year-olds to be of military age where they would be willing unquestioningly to fight and die for him. Same is true with children in the Donbas region. Vladimir Putin has been spending a fortune to indoctrinate these children. He then waited 6 or 7 years for them to become the perfect age to be his soldiers of his future wars. Here's a really interesting documentary I'll link down below called Putin's Little Soldiers, and it's kind of an innocent documentary explaining what exactly is going on inside all of these military camps for children. So children participating in this specific camp are as young as 10 years old. Let's watch about 1 minute of this clip.
We'll tough it out, of course. Captain Korotayev wants his boys to make a good impression. It's not just the families that will be visiting. The general in charge of the region will be coming, as well as a representative of President Vladimir Putin himself, for this special occasion. Over the past few years, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, has been particularly interested in the education of his countrymen and what a good education should consist of. The kind of education, in fact, that will make the average Russian proud of his country and help it prosper.
Тем россиянином, который будет гордиться своей родиной и будет все делать для ее процветания.
For more than 4 years, Vladimir Putin has sponsored a special program for the young, a patriotic education. He has authorized the spending of millions of euros each year to help finance camps like these.
So you got this giant mural of Vladimir Putin watching over the children of Russia. This video is 3 or 4 years old, so potentially some of these 15-year-olds are now killing innocent civilians in Ukraine, willing to die for Vladimir Putin. I guess Putin's investment paid off. Something I want to share with you from this documentary is they were interviewing the parents. Why? Why are you choosing to send your children voluntarily to these military youth camps? And one of the reasons is there's a lot of concern in Russia about poverty and drugs and crime, and parents think that, sending their kids to a military camp will potentially, make them better citizens or more responsible people. But I'm interested by the response of this one father about why he's sending his son to this camp.
Why are you sending your son to this camp? Why? Well, because a man needs to be a man. And you think the camp helps? Of course. A warrior learns how to defend the weak and women. Oh, I'm sorry. We have to go now. Come on then.
So there's this belief in Russia that sending your young sons to this camp will teach them how to be a man, teach them how to be a warrior, to defend women, defend the weak. Let's now check in on the track record of these young Russian warriors as they rampage through Ukraine. The first thing I want to share with you is that lots of these children have been participating in Russia's spy network, spying on their teachers, spying on their parents. This is a very Orwellian, dystopian idea that children have ears inside every house. And if they can find people unloyal to the state, unloyal to Vladimir Putin, the children should do the responsible thing and turn them in. This is the story of a 55-year-old language teacher in Russia who was not towing the party line, and her students informed on her to the FSB. Here's a story of a Soviet World War II veteran whose house was destroyed by Russian soldiers in Kharkiv. He's 97 years old. This was his entire life. This was his home, this was his yard, this was his car, and the Russians systematically have been destroying every home, every apartment building, every school, hospital, piece of infrastructure, causing a refugee crisis that Europe has not seen since World War II. For some reason, these warriors of Russia have no problem making Soviet veterans who are 97 years old completely destitute and homeless. The next clip I want to show you is going to be disturbing, but there's been lots of reports of these Russian soldiers raping Ukrainian women, and I just want to show you a couple seconds of this clip.
From the outside, there's only the slightest hint of horror. Even the obvious carnage indoors doesn't come close. This house in a village outside Kyiv is where 2 Russian soldiers allegedly raped 2 Ukrainian women who lived on the same street.
What happened in here?
One of the victims showed us the room where she was attacked.
I'll link the clip down below if you want to hear her story, but she's tremendously brave to come forward and speak about her Russian attackers. This is happening all across the country right now, as Russian soldiers have no accountability and they don't view Ukrainians basically as human beings right now. This woman is 42 years old, she's a mother, and she was repeatedly raped by a 19-year-old Russian soldier. There are also lots of disturbing phone conversations of Russian soldiers calling home to their mothers, calling home to their wives and girlfriends, admitting to war crimes. This clip, I'll link it down below. A Russian soldier tells his wife that he just shoots Ukrainian civilians in the head over death pits as they are covering up the atrocities, digging mass graves, slaughtering Ukrainian civilians by the thousands. Here's a video that was caught on CCTV of Russian soldiers breaking into a car dealership. This was earlier in the war, back in April. And these two people who worked at the car dealership, they were not armed, approached and spoke to the Russian soldiers. Everything looked fine initially. They then turned around to go back to their office, and the Russian soldiers shot them in the back and killed them in cold blood. These Russian soldiers then broke into the office of the car dealership. They stole food, they stole alcohol, they stole money out of the drawers. So where I'm going with this is, are these the ethical warriors that Russian parents think they're getting when their sons and daughters join Putin's youth army? And obviously they're not, but these are exactly the soldiers that Vladimir Putin wants and needs right now if he's going to rebuild the Russian Empire, to reconquer all of these people who don't want to be part of Vladimir Putin's vision of a resurgent Russian Empire. But how do you do it? How do you get Russian men to kill for you, to die for you, to steal, to rape, to murder innocent people? And you got to get them young. You got to get them when they're 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. It's the only way. It's the only way Vladimir Putin is going to get back all this territory that once belonged to Imperial Russia. Ultimately, though, it's not going to work. Vladimir Putin severely underestimated the resolve of the Western world and underestimated the resolve of the people of Ukraine. To wrap up this video, I want to show you this clip filmed by a lieutenant in the Ukrainian army. His name is Denis Antipov, and prior to the war, he taught at Kyiv University. He taught Korean, and he was a small business owner. When the war broke out, he went to the front lines, and sadly, last week he gave his life.
My name is Denis Antipov, and I'm Ukrainian Army lieutenant. On March 9th, I was wounded near Kharkiv by a Russian artillery strike. Now I'm back at war in Kharkiv Oblast, in one of the villages which is highly damaged by artillery fire, by constant battles. As you may see on my back, it's one of the houses which is damaged by artillery fire. And right now, you may hear the artillery strike on my back, behind me. And so, this is war for you. This is what Russian invasion done to Ukrainian people, to Ukrainian life. Everything is destroyed. Every life is damaged by war. People had to flee, to leave their houses, leave their pets, animals, farms, abandon their beloved places where their grandparents lived. And they are wounded, they are killed in action. But we'll defend our country. And despite enemy is trying hard to advance, we'll kick their asses. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes, glory to Ukraine. That's all for this update video. If you found it informative, give me a thumbs up. Really helps out with the algorithm. If you also want to share my videos, share my content, I greatly appreciate that. If you know something I don't, let me know in a comment down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, take care, be safe.